completely agree with you. And, you have to have a practice every day. And some days, like we have never seen someone who even when someone's nervous system is cooked, I have one of my professional chefs was just in here, and he's just opened a new restaurant up in Napa. And he's just like, hey, he came in with his girlfriend. She's training with us. And I was like, hey, I'm going to do some deadlifting here. Why don't you just put 60 kilos on the bar, and you're just going to do a 60 kilo deadlift once or twice every minute for the next 10 minutes. And that's not going to tax his nervous system. But we do have him moving, and we do put his system under load. We do reclaim function. And then, there's always a way of getting some work done. The key is that you mentioned it is that when the frying pan is hot, we cook. And when the frying pan's not hot, we don't need to cook, but you need to have a practice. Yeah. And I've never seen some sled drags put someone into the hospital. I've never seen, 5 sets of 15 kettlebells kill anyone. What I do know is that, when we are under our worst load, that's when we don't need to trash ourselves. And what's nice about this concept of nervous system, whether we're talking about central nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system, is that we still organize our training around the spine, and that good movement, and definition of good movement works in a wave of contraction from trunk to periphery, from core to sleeve, from axillary skeleton, peripheral skeleton, while you're doing PNF or Olympic lift. So what I can say unequivocally is, boy, we prioritize nervous system above all things in our training, and that can be relative to how hard we're training. And a recent study saw that people's perceived exertion is much higher than it actually is. And so, you need to have a relationship with someone who knows you. Hey, I know you're lollygagging today, or we need to have some other methods to be able to manage or track that, whether using RestWise or HRV or some other ways. But what we do know is, we're always looking at the organization of the nervous system mechanically, because it automatically feeds out. And that we see that if you're rounded and your neck's in a bad position, I can dump 10%, 15% of your power right off the bat. And as soon as I lose that chassis for your big engines of your hips and shoulders, then your hips and shoulders don't even work. Yeah. So, if you're a swimmer and you're at the computer all day, and then you go try to put your arm over your head, you're not going to be able to do it because your thoracic spine is blocking it, and your shoulder doesn't function very well, and your head's rotating out of plane. And what are we talking about? We're not even swimming yet, right? You haven't even done swimming. You don't even have the range of motions to be able to swim. And then if anyone can relate to this, is that one of the reasons we prioritize the spine is that if you ever injure your spine or tweak your spine, that is the worst deal ever. Your life is over. You do not want to have sex. You don't want to jump around. You're not playing with your kids. You're afraid to sneeze. You're wondering if you can get off of the loo. I don't know if I can go to work. And your body prioritizes the nervous system because it's so important. Because if you've injured your nervous system, you cannot feed yourself, reproduce, run away from danger, all those things. So I think it's crucial that we understand that if I fry my nervous system, same. If I injure my nervous system, same. If I don't organize my nervous system, I still have rotten performance. So it's really nice that this central concept kind of works forward and backwards. And I completely agree. We want people to be spine aware. You take 10,000 breaths a day in your diaphragm. And when we see people with bad backs, like they all breathe terribly. Okay, what does that mean? Well, it means that when I take a breath, I chiefly am breathing into my chest. Well, all you have to do is sit at a computer for 20 minutes and watch what happens to your back. You're going to round your back, just like you are in this chair. Yeah. And we're listening, and now all of a sudden take a breath. The only place you can breathe left is in your chest. That's because your diaphragm is compromised because you've rounded your back. And so now you physically can't access your diaphragm, which is how you're going to downregulate, how you're going to turn off the stress, parasympathetic breathing. You're going to affect your VO2. Breathing up in your chest causes this sympathetic response because you breathe in your neck when you're stressed out or under peak load. And so suddenly you're telling your body mechanically, we're under stress all the time. Why? Well, you're breathing in your face. And so not only is that inefficient, not only does that make you tired, but that's how simple this is. And everyone comes back to breath. Everyone comes back to mechanics. And this is why if you really understand what Iyengar was teaching, right? He was saying, hey, these postures, and his language of function was yoga. It wasn't deadlifting or lunging, right? But if you see and practice any of those things and see it, Joseph Pilates is the same thing. He was a dancer. He was a gymnast. He was rehabbing soldiers after World War I who were stuck in bed. I mean, that's where it came from, right? So, people have identified these core positions and things that humans should do, and then we created different languages to be able to address them. But all of them are about spine first, all of them, and they're also about breathing. Right? You have to do it, and you can't believe how bad people breathe. We do a little test. We say, hey, just bend over and pick something up in the day and see if you're holding your breath. And chances are, people are holding their breath because it's the only way they know how to get stiff. They can't breathe into these different shapes. Yeah. So they end up just going from kind of breath hold to breath hold to breath hold, which is another disaster. Yeah. I think the central part of this, and one of the things I really appreciate that you're suggesting, is that we're helping people to become human again. Yeah. These are the skills that you should be doing. And sometimes your body should dictate what your environment looks like, not the other way around. And so what we see is that you get stuck, and the sitting that people are doing is 12 to 14 hours a day typically. If we aggregate all the time at the desk, at the chair, at the loo, at the table, in the car, it's a freakish amount of sitting. Maybe in the UK you're walking a little bit more, which is great. But in America, we're spending 2.5 hours a day on our smartphones. In Korea, it's 4.5 hours a day. And so suddenly technology starts to identify, and then we're wondering why we're having all of these very, very preventable diseases. And so what's nice is that once you have a schema for understanding what good positioning is, then you can apply that schema to everything else. Like right now, I'm sitting on the floor, right? And because the chair is a disaster, and I've got my hips, I'm opening up my hips as I talk to you. And so I'm working these things out while I'm doing that. And if we give people that schema for how they're organized, and that's really what we try to do in the book, is create a Betty Crocker cookbook to say, hey, here's the operating system for your software, and here are the fixes for your broken hardware. And then how you train that system, what you do with the computer is up to you. We don't really care. But you have to have a movement practice. And running is not a movement practice. Swimming is not a movement practice. Biking is not, those are exercising, which is really important, and cardiorespiratory capacity is the thing we value the most. But keep in mind that if you're not using it, you will lose it. And then when your back hurts, or you wear your hip out, or your knee out, or you tear your Achilles, like most of the time it was preventable. And now we have the tools, it's easy to do.